the whole thing is, so it's very important to have fire, because if you don't have that fire, you don't have that fiery comeback, you're never going to build to that crescendo. And if you don't have the sympathy, you're never going to get to that point. So those are the two skills. I mean, I've seen, there's been a lot of guys, a lot of baby faces over the years that people were like, oh my God, this guy's a great baby face because he can do all these great moves. And, you know, I don't want to bury anybody in particular, but I probably will end up burying some people throughout this thing. But, you know, for right now, I'm going to try and not bury anyone. But there were some people back in the mid-90s who were some crazy, crazy high flyers before it was in vogue, before everybody could high fly like they can now, before all the smaller guys came in, when, you know, when there was very few of that. And when 220 was a small guy, as opposed to now when 160 is a small guy. You know, when 220 is an average size guy now, but back then, back when I started, 220 was very small when I started. So there was a lot of guys that could do like 450s. And they're like, man, this guy's gonna be a star, because you know 450 was huge back then. You know, moonsaults, they were big, but they couldn't sell really well, so they couldn't get any sympathy. And then when it came time to fire, they didn't know how to make a fiery comeback, so they never really got over. And the office kept wondering, why isn't this guy over? Let's keep pushing him. We're doing something wrong. But no, you can push a guy all you want. You can put him in all the best storylines. But if he doesn't have that charisma and he doesn't know how to sell and he doesn't know how to have fire, it doesn't matter anyway. You know, and the best way, and what I've always said before, and anybody who's read my website knows that my favorite thing about selling is it's very democratic. You don't have to be a great athlete to sell. Anybody can sell. It's the single most democratic skill, yet it's the single most important skill that you can have in wrestling. Like, you can be a 50-year-old lady and still be able to sell. You know, because there's actors and actresses that can sell, you know, that couldn't wrestle to save their life, but they can still, you know, you watch them in a fight scene or you watch them get kicked around, they're beat up and you know, they're all beat up and they hurt. You know what I mean? And that's what selling is, you know, and so selling's the most important thing, and that's what I love about it, is because everybody has the potential to do it, because it doesn't require a whole lot of athleticism, and that's the best thing about it. You know, the high flying stuff, you really have to be a super great athlete to do a lot of that stuff. But if you look back through the ages, all the biggest money making stars, the majority of them weren't the greatest high flyers. They weren't the greatest athletes. You know, they weren't the greatest, you know, in-ring workers, you know, by today's definition of it. I mean, but they sold and they had fire. If they were baby faces, Tommy Rich, Dusty Rhodes, Hulk Hogan. What's some more, Gabe? Ricky Morton. Well, he was pretty good. He was a hell of a high flyer, though. But I mean, back in the day. But Dusty Rhodes, he wasn't going to leave his feet. Didn't matter when Dusty Rhodes, when they beat him up, he was selling. Hulk Hogan, I mean, 300 pounds. He was the biggest guy in the company. Once they got him down, he would sell. He would shake. I mean, they would get him down. You'd be like, fuck, he's hurt. You know what I mean? Or, you know, at least as hurt as you're willing to suspend disbelief, which is the whole object. And yeah, who are some more baby faces? Slaughter is a baby face, and he was a big guy too back then, 280. Some of the baby faces, Barry Windham, another big guy. Steamboat. You know, the list goes on, but I mean, Steamboat, another one. He was another great athlete, though. But I mean, and not that these other guys weren't great athletes, but I'm saying away from the high flyers. I mean, I'm talking about guys that were. You wouldn't go, they're great workers by today's standards. You know what I mean? Steamboat would be a great worker by any standard. You know, but
what about Dreamer?
Dreamer, yeah, he's a big fat ass. I love Tommy. He's a big fat ass, but didn't matter. When he sold, he got down, he would sell, he would shake. You're like, God damn, he's hurt. Come on, Tommy, fight back. My hero as a kid, I totally forgot, Chief J Strongbow. They would beat him up. In fact, as a kid, I couldn't wait to see him get beat up, just because I knew that he would make the most dramatic comeback ever. I mean, to me, it was like, and that's what the sympathy from the heat when they beat you down. And the selling leads into the fiery comeback, and so they're inextricably tied together. You can't have one without the other to be, you know, as good as you need to be. So you get beat down, you're selling your ass off, and then when it's time, when that proper moment comes, that's when you fire back up and build into your fiery comeback. And my favorite as a kid was Chief J Strongbow, because he would go in his war dance, and like I guess as a kid, like what would happen is they would beat him up until finally he would just start shaking, and they would hit him. And he would just start to like, you know, I guess he went into his Indian trance. The phone. Answer the phone, flunky. Take care of that. Very good. We'll just sit here and listen to you answer the phone. Or unplug it. Anyway, he would go into this Indian trance, and then to where he wouldn't feel any pain anymore, which, I don't know, as a kid made perfect sense to me because, you know, it sounded like it made sense. And to me, I still think that works. He would go into this trance, and he would start shaking, it'd hit him, and he would stop selling, and he would sell a little less, and a little less, and a little less, and finally, he would start firing up and start firing these chops, and it was the most fiery, most dramatic comeback I'd ever seen. I mean, so dramatic that you would get goosebumps. Jerry Lawler, same thing. They would beat him up and beat him up till finally he just wouldn't take it anymore. And finally, he would shake and he would shake and he would shake, and finally he'd had enough. He'd pull the strap down and the place would just erupt. I mean, it was orgasmic. I mean, it really, if you've never been to Memphis Coliseum when the King made his comeback, or you've never seen a tape of it, it's absolutely orgasmic. Hulk Hogan, he did the same thing back in the day. He would start shaking, shaking, shaking. All of a sudden, he was like, that's it. I'm not going to feel any more pain. I'm not going to feel the pain anymore. He'd start shaking. And then he'd gradually build up to where he felt no more pain. And he'd be like, and it's so dramatic, you know, which, that's called the Superman comeback, which is a little more difficult. And you have to, it's a little more difficult to master, but it's also, to me, the most dramatic and the most fascinating. Because I think it has the biggest payoff. It's also the hardest to perfect, and you have to have the right character to be able to pull it off because it is a huge step. Most people have to go a little more gradually into their comeback, but once again, the key being selling, 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 selling to the point where they don't think you're going to come back anymore. So you sell to the point where they go, oh, he's not going to come back anymore, and then you fire it, because if you're only halfway beat up, and then you fire back, well, it's not that dramatic because you're not that beat up, and that's what nobody gets. Everybody wants to stay so strong. They're like, well, I don't want to get, if I get beat up, I'll look weak. Well, see, then that is the biggest misnomer of all, because if you get beat up and you don't look weak, then you have no sympathy. And the whole thing is everybody, and if you don't look weak, people can't identify with you, because everyone can identify with getting beat up or the concept of possibly getting beat up. And let's face it, once the heel cheats to get the advantage, he already has an advantage. He should be able to beat you up. So the more beat down you are, the more dramatic your comeback is. I mean, let's face it, if you're getting beat up and you only got like a sore wrist and then you fight back, that's not very dramatic. But if you're beat up and you're laying on the ground and your blood's pouring out of your head and drool's falling out of your mouth and you're shaking and there's no way you can come back, but you come back, that's drama. Like that stupid TNT commercial, that's drama. But that's what wrestling is. Wrestling's a freaking drama. I'll say it again, wrestling is a drama. It's a drama. It's a drama, it's a morality play, but it's a drama in a squared circle. And until people realize that it's a drama, they'll never really advance to the next level, because if they just keep thinking it's athletics, 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 you're never going to get the whole thing, because as much as it is athletics, it's absolutely a drama. And so, the best analogy I can always give for that is, besides the jerking off thing, which, there's my example of it, it's a Rocky movie. In Rocky 1, the most dramatic scene in the whole damn movie was Rocky, my food's here, come on in. I'll eat my food in a little bit. Anyway, most dramatic part of the whole damn movie was in Rocky 1, and the whole series, in my opinion, was in Rocky 1, he's getting beat down about the 13th round, and finally he gets knocked down. And the ref starts counting, and they slow it down to slow-mo, and they're like, 1. And they get to 8. 8. And his corner's going, stay down. Because he's so beat up, they don't want him to get hurt anymore. They're so concerned for his well-being that they're afraid if he gets up and answers the count, he may not live after the fight, or he may be so permanently damaged that it's going to ruin the health and well-being of the rest of his life. So they're all going, stay down. But he doesn't, all he does is get from the ground to his feet. Doesn't throw a punch, doesn't do a single thing offensively, but all he does is go from the ground to standing, and it's the most dramatic thing I've ever seen, because everybody's telling him to stay down. You don't think there's any chance of him getting up, even if he wanted to get up, and yet he barely fights, gets up. They stop the round, the round ends, but he doesn't get counted out because he gets to his feet before the 10 count. And it's the most dramatic, spine-tingling thing, like one of my favorite scenes of any movie I've ever seen. And it's so dramatic. And to me, that epitomizes what wrestling should be in the right moments. It's that drama when you're like, where the babyface can't do anymore, where he's so down and out, and yet through that intestinal fortitude, through that heart, through that whole babyface mentality, he fights through the pain, gets to his feet, and he's still ready to go. And you're like, holy crap, what a, it's mind-boggling. And that's the art of being a babyface. And if you've never seen the movie or seen the scene, go rent it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the 13th round. I mean, I could be wrong. I misremember a lot of stuff, but that scene is so ingrained in my head. In the corner going, stay down. It's so dramatic. And that is, as a babyface, is what you should aspire to. I mean, if Hulk Hogan at 300 pounds, and for the WWF, who was the bankroll for 10 years, the biggest star in the company, if he can get beat up, stay down, sell for the entire for the entire length of his heat and whatever. I mean, I don't see why anybody else can, because let's face it, he was the biggest star on the planet for 10 years, or maybe 20 years, maybe longer, maybe ever. And if he's willing to sell, then there's no reason why anybody else shouldn't.
All right.
Selling to get sympathy and then being able to make the comeback.
Yeah. Dom, I sent you this clip, and what'd you think of it so far?
I like that I like that he's differentiating between selling and getting sympathy, because you can sell, but if you only sell a little bit and then pop up again like it's like oh, you're fine, then you're not really getting as dramatic as you can, and it's also just not as realistic to me. Like I bring up every now and then, we brought up a couple times today, covering King and Queen of the Ring, that Randy Orton sold his left knee the whole match. Mm-hmm. Bianca Belair sold her knee when it got hurt. I mean, people who understand ring psychology, that's really what Raven's talking about there.
Sami Zayn did it today too.
Sami Zayn did it.
A half a second to grab his knee to remind you, okay, he's still selling that.
Yeah, it's understanding the difference between athleticism and ring psychology. Like, you can have one without the other. It's best if you have both.
Yeah, I love what he said about looking weak and how that's not a big deal. Everyone feels weak. Everyone can sympathize with somebody that's feeling weak. So you can't think of it like, oh, well, I got to be the big, strong hero. And it's no, people are scared and they look weak at certain points because that's human nature. And it's much more understandable if somebody acts like that rather than if they're Bill Goldberg getting 100+ wins and just doing all the spears and you're like, okay, now what,